like to call the Planning Commission meeting of Monday, July the 25th to order. Could we please call the roll?
Alderman Bach. Oh, sorry.
Here.
Commissioner Bach. Commissioner Becky Schaefer.
Here.
Commissioner Stoker.
Here.
Commissioner Gentis.
Here.
Commissioner Hawley.
Here.
Commissioner Chorin.
Here.
Mayor Nurbin.
Here, clinging to a quorum. First up, we've got several items on the consent agenda, each with a public hearing. There is an item F.
Did you want to do the minutes first?
Oh, shoot, you're right. I see I crossed it off already. So eager to move on since we have such a big audience here. Oh, so backing it up. Next up, approval of the minutes from June 27th.
Move to approve.
Motion and a second. Any comments or corrections? I can't comment. I wasn't there because I was down and out sick that night. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Minutes are approved. Now the consent agenda, each with a public hearing. So in case you saw there was an item F that was supposed to be on, it is canceled. It also appears to maybe not have been posted on the website. That was for Park Avenue Plaza of Mequon LLC. That will not be happening tonight. So we'll take up the other 5 items. We'll run through all the public hearing portion and then figure out how we want to tackle the consent agenda from an approval standpoint. So first up, we have Lakeside Development for Partnership LSD. Applicant is seeking a conditional use grant to allow for a medical office for the property located at 1535 West Market Street. Is there a motion to go into public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor of entering public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
We are in public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak about this item? Seeing none, is there a motion to close? Oh,
I represent.
you want to come up to the podium? Yeah.
I represent items number A, B, and C. I work for Lakeside Development. My name is Brian Shive. I'm an architect. I'm also the architect for item number C for Daystar Properties.
Okay. Do you have any comments to make, or maybe since you represent the
Just
applicant,
if
we
you
should...
guys have any questions, feel free to ask me.
Okay, well, we can take, if there's any questions, we'll take them when we're out of public hearing. We're just listening now, we're not responding.
We can go all these in one public hearing, or we got to do them individually?
I asked, and it's not that easy.
All right, well, then motion to close public hearing.
No, second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor of closing public hearing, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
We are out of public hearing. Next, we have Lakeside Development for Partnership LSD, another conditional use grant for another medical office facility located at 1511 West Market Street. Is there a motion to enter public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're in public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak about this item? Seeing none.
Motion to close public hearing. Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor of closing public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
We are out of public hearing again. Next, Dynastar Properties applicant is seeking a conditional use grant approval to allow for another medical clinic at the property located at 1500 West Market Street. Is there a motion to go into public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second again. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are in public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? Seeing none.
Motion to close.
Second.
Motion and a second to close. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're closed again. Next is Concord Development Company. The applicant is seeking the conditional use grant to allow for a fitness center at the property located at 1350 to 1370 West Mequon Road. Is there a motion to go into public hearing?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor of entering public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
We are in public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak about this item? Seeing none.
Close public hearing. Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
We're out of public hearing. Now the last one, Concord Development for GF Smoothies. Applicant is seeking the conditional use grant approval to allow for a restaurant for the property located at 1400 West Mequon Road. Is there a motion to go into public hearing?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We're in public hearing. Is there anyone here for this item? Yes, sir. Okay, it's for the public hearing portion. Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. And I'll turn my volume.
Aye.
Close
Pretending
public
that's
hearing,
right. Needed a motion.
Close
Motion
public
to-
hearing.
That's right, yeah. Motion to close public hearing,
Second
sorry.
that motion.
Is that better? I turned up the volume just a crank. Okay.
We have a motion.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We're out of public hearing. Now, we have these matters before us as the public hearing section is over. Would any one of the commissioners or any one of the applicants like to separate themselves from voting on these as a whole? Commissioner Schaefer.
I was just confirming that gentleman represents A, B, and C. Is that what he said? I missed the last one. I know A and, I mean, they're adjacent, I think, so.
I believe he left.
Oh,
I believe, yeah, he's representing Lakeside Development.
he said A and B, and then he said one other
I think he was
C.
architect for C
The
and
architect for
representing.
C.
for C.
Yes.
Cat, okay. I thought you said Z, and I was like, that one's definitely not on the agenda. Okay.
And they've,
That's all.
accepted all the conditions?
Lori worked on all these, and she's ill today, but she didn't relay any negative concerns with the conditions that are in the report.
I guess if there's any applicant, anyone here representing an applicant that objects to anything, they should ask to be removed from the consent agenda. We'll take, otherwise we'll vote on all 5 of these at once. Did I see someone in back? Sir, the smoothies, were you interested in speaking about the smoothies? Okay. Yes, which item are you here to speak about?
Here to speak on item D for Concord Properties, Anytime Fitness.
Okay,
The only adjustment that we'd like to make is that the operator of the business, the application was filed for 5,400 square feet, and the applicant is still, or the operator of the business is still considering potentially being slightly larger. So subject to staff comments as it relates to parking ratios and anything
let's
else.
park item D then and take up items A through E and then come back to D. Don't go very far.
Thanks.
I'm sorry, I have one more clarifying question, not necessarily to take it out of the agenda, but this item E, maybe a question for Jack. This is separate from the other smoothie place that we recently talked about? Is this
Yes,
unique?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
So is there a motion to take up items A, B, C, and E?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, okay. We have those 4 items before us. Is there any additional discussion or questions needed? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those 4 items passed. So let's go back to item D now. Sir, please take a seat and we'll start back at the beginning.
Sounds great. So the operator of Anytime Fitness, who's present tonight, is still doing a bit of a market study to identify potentially making this club larger than the application initially called for. The application was for 5,400 square feet, which is essentially 3 bays at the what we call C37, or the better known as the Panera Anchored Shopping Center. And as the operator continues to do his market evaluation, there's the potential that he'll want to expand into a 4th bay, totaling roughly 7,500 square feet. And so we're looking as to avoid coming to a future meeting if it could be considered to be up to 7,500 square feet, subject to staff, as it relates to parking ratio and things of that nature, zoning related.
I'm in uncharted territory.
Yeah, it's a
Jack.
little out of a request. I mean, if it's a couple hundred square feet, I think it wouldn't be an issue, but this is a pretty large difference than what they're showing. We have no floor plan or anything else to show it. So unfortunately, I think if it's that large of an expansion, we would require an amendment to the conditional use. Unless you tell us otherwise, but I mean, typically we like to see the floor plan and evaluate all this parking and every other possible issue at the time of the hearing.
So is there a fee associated with the amendment?
It's the same as the original, so yes, there would be a $717 fee.
So I propose, and someone can make a motion, perhaps since we understand the nature of the request, I'd propose taking up the matter as is, but waiving the fee if they come back within I don't know, 3 months. You're going to know pretty soon.
Yeah, we'll know next month for sure.
I
Our
would
goal
su-
is to have this business open by the end of end of the year. So
I would suggest we have a minor request fee, which is $199, because this still involve posting it in the newspaper and sending out the cards again. So we have to go through all that process and have the public hearing. So if you're going to
Okay, the
reduce
lower-
the fee to $199 would be, I think.
The $199 then, just to cover the mailing costs.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
great,
Is that a reasonable compromise? We're kind of,
certainly.
all right.
Just make the motion to, I have a question.
I have a question too.
With the fitness being open 24 hours, maybe this is more of a question for the operator of the development. Is the site lighting on for 24 hours?
If it's not, it's something we can address with the programming and something we can discuss with the operator, or if that's a condition of the permit, it could be considered.
I think that should be the case. I mean, you don't want people arriving there at 2 in the morning and the site's dark and the building's lit up. So I think that's something important.
Where we've leased to Anytime Fitness in the past throughout Milwaukee and other communities, we've addressed that. And typically with modern lighting with controls, we can also control maybe not the entire parking lot being illuminated, but portions closest to the entry.
True.
Something we can address. Good question.
That was my question too, Jack. In the city, is there any restrictions on 24-hour businesses?
Well, again, if it's a permitted use, technically they can be open 24 hours by right, but we typically don't see that a lot. Most of the uses that would entertain a 24-hour operation are typically conditional uses. Some of you may recall we had a fitness center within the River Center where Piggly Wiggly is. The town center has specific guidelines at time frames. They actually asked for 24 hours there. They did not get it at that time. They were limited, I believe, till from 11 p.m. to 5 p.m. they had to be, or 5 a.m. they had to be shut down. So we don't have a lot, I'd say, other than maybe the McDonald's and Quick Trip. I'm not aware of too many other ones that are 24 hours. We did reach out to the police department to ask them, and they said as long as they follow their security measures that they've presented, they're okay with it. But if you want to add a condition that the parking lot remain illuminated during the time they're open, I think that's a good suggestion.
And is there staff 24 hours, or is it not?
There's not. So with Anytime Fitness, and Lawrence can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there's 14,000 locations worldwide. They've done quite remarkably well in terms of working towards a very safe and secure environment with video cameras, a lot of AI, key fob access, etc.
So we
So
had a
I will make,
motion. I think we have an amendment.
Is there any other discussion before I make a motion? I'll make a motion to approve per staff's recommendations, waiving the $799 fee if the applicant comes back to go to a larger property by the October Planning Commission meeting. You will still be subjected to the $199 fee. And I'd also like to add that as part of the conditions, that the lighting will remain on 24 hours in the parking lot.
second.
So motion and a second. Any further comments or questions? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes unanimously. See you in a month.
Thank you.
Actually 2, because we're not here next month.
Thank you.
That brings us through the consent agenda. Next up, we got regular business. First up, item 4A, Mark Hilgendorf. The applicant is seeking a minor request for a 2,100 square foot accessory structure for the property located at 11521 West Mequon Road.
I'll handle this.
Please
So Lori's
give
not
us an
here.
overview.
So I'll
As good as
pitch
you
it
can,
for.
knowing you're playing backup.
So again, this is an agricultural building request. This is a 2,100 square foot building. Anything over 1,000 square feet in the agricultural areas requires planning commission approval. I have the picture on the screen of what the building would look like. It's basically a canvas, kind of a hoop house structure with white and green stripes. This will house farm equipment according to the owner, and it will be in place for about 10 to 15 years, which would require it to be a permanent structure under our code definition. Staff in this case actually does recommend denial of the building. There's really no other buildings on site that match this type of structure and color. We feel that typically in these over 1,000 square foot buildings, you're looking at steel or metal or some other type of agricultural building. This is somewhat unusual. I haven't seen a request like this in the years I've been here. I just don't think this is something we want to support. I think this is one of the reasons why we require PC approval for 1,000 square feet or above, to make sure that these buildings are compatible with the surrounding area and the buildings on site. So with that, we do recommend denial of the request.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the commissioners?
And I don't know
Questions?
if the applicant is actually here or not.
Is the applicant here tonight? Would you like to come up to the podium? Sure.
This is very typical of farm buildings now. It's just typical storage of machinery, and you see them around here. They even use them for greenhouses. You see a lot of these buildings put up a greenhouse if they use a clear type vinyl. This is white. I can make it any color. It comes in red, white, green, gray. My building barn is gray. I got an outshed in the back that's tan and matches. It's a structure built in down in Missouri, and they're all over the country now. They're not as expensive. A bowl shed of that same size would be $90,000, and there's no money in agriculture to pay for a mine for a temporary, because Mequon is not an agricultural community anymore. It's not going to grow for agriculture. We put up something temporary to put our machinery under to keep it out of the weather. And it's all over the property now. Machinery, I want to put it in one spot and keep it dry. I know, because I talked to Rick Lemke. He didn't have a problem with putting this thing in where we were putting it. We wanted to put it by the road. He said we can't put it by the road where the rest of my buildings are, so I put it in the back, away from the road, out of sight. Nobody can see it. It's not a view of anybody except maybe an airplane. It's out in the back pasture. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where it's going.
Thank you. Commissioner Torrey.
To staff, is your objection to the color, the shape, I mean, if it was like, as the gentleman said, if it could be maybe a uniform gray to match the rest of his buildings, even though it is kind of a Quonset hut shape to it, would you still have an issue with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think, we put this condition in for everything over 1,000 square feet to be approved by PC with the expectation that would match other buildings. It's a very large building, and again, it's not temporary. This thing could be there for 40 years, and so if we're not going to require any architectural standards for these, then I don't know why we would have the requirements for PC to approve them. We did get a call, and I don't know if we got a response from Lori, because again, she's not here, but there was a neighbor that is in the house basically, that's located directly in front of the building that was not supportive of it, but I don't know if he submitted anything to Lori before she left on Friday because she was ill today. So
I would have to assume this is a significantly economical way to address his concerns, rather than what could be built or would have to be built to meet our standards.
Sure. Yes, I would agree.
Any other comments from the commissioners? Oh, sorry, Commissioner Hawley.
I think that I understand what he's trying to do, but I think it's setting a precedent if we're going to start accepting things like this. And as much as I, understand where he's coming from, I'm not supportive.
Commissioner Stoker.
For the same reasons, I'm struggling due to the precedent we're setting, but however, I think it's fair to mention that just west of here on the Farmdale Estates property, I just took one of these down when we developed the subdivision. It was green, the exact same thing, probably the same size. And then I know it was there for at least 15 years, so this isn't unheard of in Mequon. I don't know if that's grandfathered before we changed the code, or if you have any thought on that.
Yeah, I don't know if it was built with approvals. It was done prior to me arriving, because in the 16 years that I've been here, we've never approved one of these. The closest we've come to, I think, was the Nature Preserve had basically kind of a Quonset hut for their almost like a greenhouse in a sense, but that was the only one that I can remember that would have this type of structure and shape.
I'll also add that when we took it down, it was in pretty rough shape. So,
Yes, sir. Which one?
okay, I didn't put it back up.
Yeah, I was going to ask staff to comment. It's not the shape so much as the materials. It's fabric. I mean, it's like a giant version of hoop houses. Sometimes people put in their residential properties, which we have universally discouraged.
Yeah, I think there's several.
It's a little bit nicer than that.
Yeah, but it is still canvas, and it still has like basically tie downs at the bottom. It's I think it's economical is what it is. And the shape is probably somewhat involved in the matter, but I think it's more the materials and the colors.
Commissioner Schaefer.
I feel like if we say that we're not supporting this, we're basically dictating a much more expensive solution to this gentleman's issue. And I'm not comfortable with that, given where he is at. Like, yes, hoop house. Okay, he's in a very rural area. The area that he described, that I can see in our packet, as well as what he described, is not necessarily so visible from that it's going to, that someone's going to feel that it's an eyesore unless they're really trying hard to see it. I guess I would be in favor of allowing it. I get that and I typically don't like setting a precedent, so I get what I'm going in eyes wide open, but I'm also cognizant of how expensive everything is right now. I don't feel comfortable saying, sorry, you can't do this, and instead, to solve your problem, you're going to have to spend, I don't even know how, 4 to 5 times, I don't know, but multiple times more to try to address just consolidating his equipment and keeping it dry. It seems like a reasonable ask.
I have a question for the applicant. Is it possible to locate this structure not adjacent to a neighbor's rear property line? Is there a better spot for it?
Did I hear the applicant correctly? You're 1,000 feet from Mequon Road, because what we're seeing is it's looking more like 350 feet from
That's
Mequon.
hard to tell. Can you?
Yeah. Little Google Maps.
So it'd be basically in this location here.
And where's the rear neighbor?
It's right there. Yeah. That's not 1,000 feet from Mequon Road.
It's 350 feet.
According to the survey map in the packet, the lot line is 330 feet deep from the road right away on Mequon Road to the back property line, and the 52 feet more, so 382 feet. But it's really the proximity to, I mean, if anyone's got to look at it, it's your neighbor. Any more comments from the commission or questions? I mean, I am sympathetic to the issue of cost. It is, at least one neighbor is going to have to look at it.
Yeah, that's what I struggle with.
It's maybe marginally better. I'm not sure. Any more comments or questions, or should we Someone want to make a motion?
Well, let's see how this flies. A motion to accept staff's recommendations for denial. See where it goes.
Second.
It's a motion and a second to deny. Are there any other comments, questions? Let's call the roll.
Commissioner Gentes,
No.
Commissioner Hawley. So like I to deny, correct? Correct. Commissioner Chorin,
Well, since I made the motion, I have to say aye.
Commissioner Bach,
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer. No. Commissioner Stoker,
No.
Mayor Nurbin.
No.
You guys are fun. I'm going to say no. So that motion fails. We have not approved it, though. We've just failed to deny it. I would personally like to see more done to see this screened from the view of your neighbor. I'm not sure what the topography is. Or if there's an alternate location.
So if there was a motion of the structure, same structure, further away with a different fabric.
And something that maybe matches the other buildings a little better as well. I will. It's proposed as white and green, so I'm not sure what the other structures are colored, but something that closely resembles the other structures' basic appearance and color. It's subject to getting it worked out at staff level.
It may be beneficial at one point if we don't want to design on the fly either, so it may be beneficial to table this if just with some direction.
That's not a bad idea. I think we're giving some verbal direction here to the applicant to consider it, placing it a little better, and then to make it more close in appearance to the other structures from a color standpoint.
Before we table, can I ask?
Sure. Let's ask as many questions as possible before we table.
I'm curious to the staff if there was a level of screening, if there is no other alternative location on the property, if there was screening to the north, so the house to the north wasn't looking at it, would that be more?
I think it'd be somewhat beneficial. I think the nice part about this one, from my understanding, is it's only 16 feet in height.
Yeah, it's not very tall.
So it's not very tall. So if you had additional, maybe some evergreens there that planted at 7 feet, it would start screening it pretty quickly, and over a number of years would probably do a nice job.
Be open to those discussions, creating some sort of screening?
So one of those.
I like your color scheme.
Definitely one of those three then. Commissioner Schaefer.
I think I was going to try to make a motion, but I'll wait to see if there's any more discussion.
So do we capture all that color, location, and or screening? I think location could be overruled by some screening, visual screening for the neighbor to the north. And then we'll come back and talk about this in September if we table it, which it looks like we will. think I have an understanding of your constraints, but just a few pine trees or some arborvitaes would check the box on the screening then. And then you could keep it in that location, most likely.
Just the observation that this is an agricultural use, and it's consistent with an agricultural use. I think if we can get past the color coordination issues and the screening issue for the neighbor, obviously the neighbor's concern is important. I was struggling with objecting to a use that is going to serve an agricultural use. Granted, it's larger than what the code currently permits, but that's why we're here.
Well, it's not necessarily about, you're not seeing it just because the code doesn't permit it. We've allowed buildings far bigger than this, but the code requires that over 1,000 square feet to come to planning commission, because at that, it's a pretty big size, the massing, that we want to make sure the building is compatible looking and architecturally, pleasing. So it's not just a matter of being over 1,000 square feet, I think, is the issue. It's once you get over that far, we want to make sure that we're looking at a building that's not going to be overwhelming to a residential neighbor or things like that. So I think we can, I think with some of the conditions you're asking for, we can work it out. I want to make sure we don't go on a precedent setting about economics, because that could go down a slippery slope in the future. So if we're okay with this because it's in the back and it can be well screened, we may see another one in the future, and then we'll have to be okay with it at that point as well. So,
and it's not super big.
No, I mean, there has been bigger, but it's 2,000. The height, I think the height is a benefit. If it's only 16 feet, that does help.
Yeah, but I've got, in the agricultural areas, I've got a little more tolerance for something like this, but obviously not in, you never see it in 1 acre zoned areas.
No.
All right, is there a motion to table?
I can make a simple motion to table if we feel like we've captured the consideration.
I think we've got it. We have enough to work on.
Okay. Then I would move to table this item.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 It's tabled, and we'll see you again in September. Next, we have Lockery Companies. Applicant is seeking a building and site plan amendment approval to allow for conversion of office/commercial use to residential use for the property located at 11205 to 11315 North Cedarburg Road and 5900 to 6048 West Mequon Road. This is the second floor of the south building, otherwise known as Mequon Town Center 1.
Sure. I just pulled it up on the screen just to make sure everyone understands what building is the south building. That's the one that's located right here. It's right on Mequon Road. In the past, it held Health and Balance as well as Bobby Fisher Chiropractic. The applicant's requesting to convert that second floor to single-family apartments. The PUD for the development actually allowed up to 50 units when we originally developed it, and since they had smaller bigger units than they originally thought, they only used 28 in the north and the east building. So they do have the ability to add units without a PUD amendment. The PUD does limit the number of buildings that are less than 1,000 square feet, and they're meeting that requirement as well. So these are roughly around 800 square feet apartments. Obviously, in the past, we've had issues with traffic and parking in this development, so we had them have Taddy run some parking analysis, and I did put something on the dais for you. I think it was omitted from your packet. Basically, what it shows is that actually the parking during the week is a benefit by going to the residential, because those commercial businesses are not in operation. But there was an instance on Saturdays around 7 o'clock where the apartments actually were 7 in the negative in terms of parking. So I had them run a calculation for the whole development at 7 o'clock on Saturday, which shows them to have well in excess of parking, because some of the other commercial tenants are closed at that time. So the commercial aspect of it does go away. The residential comes in. So I think overall it does a good job of balancing the parking. One of the requirements we have on there is that there's the parking. It's in basically the north building located here. There's 14 stalls on that first floor. We're recommending that each one of those 8 units get a spot in there. It just kind of helps alleviate the surface parking for the commercial users. And then if there's additional parking, they can divvy that up. They also have excess in the underground parking at times, depending on the lease agreements they have for the other units. But and if they have to use the surface for some of that excess, they can. But we just want to make sure that at least one of those spots in that surface level parking is dedicated to each one of those units. So with that, we do recommend approval according to the conditions in the report.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions from the commissioners?
Did you want to call up the applicant? I'm not sure if they have any issues with any of the conditions.
Sure. Does anyone representing this item want to speak or come to the podium?
Victor Anderson with Mequon Town Center. I mean, we meet the requirements. So there's nothing really to speak of, but if you've got questions, I can help out. There'll be luxury apartments, but 1 bedroom.
Okay. Any questions?
Simple question. The 12 parking stalls that Jack referred to, that's currently public parking, correct? The indoor?
Currently, correct.
Yeah, it's always been one of those, it's kind of an unusual. Yeah, originally that was meant to be another commercial space, but they didn't have parking for it, so they made it parking. But it's always been somewhat unusual because sometimes you go in there and there's not a space and you have to kind of turn around. It's tough to back out. So this way, I think if they use that as residential parking and key code it, maybe then it helps alleviate some of those issues.
We're only going to assign the 8. Yeah.
Okay.
Motion to approve per staff's recommendations.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
And now we get to the real meat of the agenda. First up, we have Hickory Hollow Subdivision. The applicant is seeking an open space plan and easement amendment approval for the property located at 9801 North Old Barn Road. We have several people registered to speak. I'll call you up in the order in which they're presented to me, and everyone can get 5 minutes to speak. We have several applicants, so try and keep the points non-repetitive as possible, but you will all get your chance to speak. So first we have, sorry, I'm going to mess this up. And Evan Beck. Evan Beck. Okay. Oh, there was no, okay. Sorry. There's a support that did not wish to speak. Okay, do not check the box. Okay, the first person wishing to speak is John Rosstein. Supports, who wishes to speak they live at 217 East Chowning Square.
Good evening.
Go ahead, sir.
It's John Rosstein. I am a resident at Hickory Hollow. I've been there for over 30 years. I support the petition tonight. Our president of the association will speak more fully. I support what he has to say. Also, Greg Letts has a slight amendment he wants to address. I support that too. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next person who wishes to speak is Jennifer Rosstein from the same address.
Good evening, and Mayor Nurbin, thank you for your service. Commissioners, thank you for your service and what you do for this. We really appreciate it. I'm speaking in favor of this amendment, and we are a group of 39 families that live in this area. And we appreciate the work that you've gone through to get us to where we are today. And I guess, Phil will speak to this, but I guess the only concern that I have is that we are 39 families. We're all neighbors. And so how much structure do we want to have to bring before the Planning Commission for some of, if we can have music from 9 instead of 9:30, would we have to come forward if somebody was having, a community party that included the entire neighborhood? Would that require us to come here and bother you, basically? So it's just little things like that. But we appreciate what you're doing, and we appreciate that this is something that is a benefit for our little corner of Mequon. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll read off the rest of the names of the people who submitted cards, but upon looking closer, many of them indicated they did not want to speak. So I was incorrect earlier. So we have Elizabeth Weir, who supports, does not wish to speak. Celeste and Glenn Arnold support, do not wish to speak. Greg Lutz, supports, does not wish to speak. Julie Lutz also supports, does not wish to speak. And Glenn Arnold, is it Glenn? Okay, got it, sorry. Supports and does not wish to speak. So with that, those are all the comment cards we have. Maybe a brief report from staff, and then a chance for the applicant to speak as well.
Sure. This is a somewhat of an unusual situation. So this is the Hickory Hollow subdivision. This was approved back in the 70s. We received a number of complaints last winter about some of the uses on site. One of them, which was some of the activities going on in the barn, which is located here. And then there's also a vacant lot, which is right here, that's owned by the association. They had a hockey rink put up, so we received some complaints about that. So we did some digging into our files as best we could, and we didn't really find a whole ton of information on restrictions. There was an open space easement that's part of their actual HOA documents that was approved by the city. It did mention a number of different things that in the open space, but there was no codified regulation. So we went forward and we felt this is a good time to kind of bring this in front of the commission as for an amendment and get these things codified so we don't have any future issues going forward. There was some notes in our file from back in 2004 that there was some complaints about loud music and things like that. And so we felt this is just a good time to document this going forward. And what we try to do is we didn't want to deviate too much from what was going on out there, but we still wanted to have some restrictions. I understand the self-policing of the association, but as I explained to the HOA president, I mean, you have another subdivision that's right adjacent to it, and there are residents in the subdivision that may not necessarily agree with some of the activities, so I'm trying to do a balancing act between giving them the rights to do things on their property without having a negative impact on the surrounding neighborhood. So with regard to the one of the things that we won't be discussing tonight is this issue of the hockey rink that we worked with our city attorney to determine if they want to actually use that vacant lot, which the association purchased in about 1977. They would have to amend their actual PUD for that. So that's not on the table tonight, and they're aware of that if they do want to come forward with using a rink this year, they'll have to formally amend that PUD. So what we did try to do is codify the requirements of what's existing on what's considered Lot 4, which is where the pool is. So basically that we have the pool with tennis courts, and then we have the barn. The barn includes a caretaker unit on basically the lower level, and then there's a clubhouse on the second floor. And I just want to mention, as part of this, they've been also working with our inspection department and our fire department to try to clean up some code issues related to the barn and the apartment as well. So as best I could do, I came through the process and looked at the open space agreement, talked to the HOA president, and so we came up with some criteria for restrictions. I did get a call from one of the residents who couldn't be here tonight, but he was trying to make the argument, I don't know if it's true or not, that the pool is typically only open until 10 on weekdays and 11 on weekends. They're requesting, again, 11 and midnight on weekends. We also put some conditions in there with regard to you can't lease or rent the clubhouse to separate entities. Someone involved in the HOA would have to actually be sponsoring the use of that clubhouse. We had a condition about no amplified music outside past 9 p.m. That's kind of a typical condition we place on other restaurants and other outdoor uses. We had the condition about the open space activities on Lot 28 that would have to come for a PUD amendment. And then we just wanted to make sure that they would contact the police department for any large events that involves parking on the streets, because there was some complaints in the past about that not being done. I did speak to the police chief. He said over the last 5 years they had 2 issues there, nothing major, but he wasn't objecting to any of the requirements that we're placing on it, but he just wanted to make sure that they should call them if there's large gatherings that use the on-street parking. So we're supportive of the the conditions we placed in the report, again, with this open space easement being part of their HOA docs, where one of the requirements is that they get that actually formally approved by their HOA, that they incorporate those conditions in there as well. So I guess we can discuss some of the potential changes they're asking for, and we can go from there.
I just had a question in general. How does what we're proposing for hours and restrictions compare to other similar developments?
Well, it's somewhat unusual because there's so many different subdivisions that have so many specific requirements. Like, you know, for North Shore Country Club, they're allowed to have 4 events a year. They can play loud music till 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock at night, like their member meeting or their annual party. So they're all a little bit different. Some of them we don't really have a lot of requirements. Kind of like this. This was built, you know, early on before we added a lot of requirements to them. So some of them we don't know. And if somebody, the only way we're really going to enforce it if somebody complains, and then we're going to have to do some digging into the history and try to figure them out. So it's really hard to say what other, you know, older ones are restricted by. And then in the newer ones today don't typically have these kind of features with them as much. So it's a really tough one to compare to.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Schaefer.
Lac de Coeur.
Yeah, that's another one of those old ones. And I'm not.
Have similar amenities.
Yeah, they have some similar amenities. I don't know their specific requirements. You know, it's one of those things where we haven't gotten any complaints. They've been self-regulating, so we haven't really looked into that. I mean,
it's not apples to apples, but it's a lot bigger, and it's a little.
It's a lot bigger.
Disparate,
it's towards the center of their development as well. I checked they have their pool rules posted online, and they close themselves down at 7 at night.
Yeah, they close early.
Which is really seems a little early. Yeah. Any other comments or questions from the rest of the commission? Okay. Otherwise, applicant, can you introduce yourself and?
Yes, it's working all right.
Yep, I think so. Can
Yeah,
hear him?
I'm Philip Weir. I'm the president of the Hickory Hollow Homeowners Association. So I'm responsible for managing the needs of all 39 of our households that we're so proud of. And we certainly do appreciate, Jennifer Rosstein said it so well, we appreciate the city coming to us and helping us through some of the particulars that we need to change. And we are willing to do some changes, particularly around the safety. We are concerned constantly of both our members as well as the guests, that they can operate in a safe environment. So we're taking the code remediations very seriously, and we're looking for reasonable alternatives to some of the things that exist inside the codes, to make sure that we will operate in a safe environment. In fact, I mean, you can see from the numbers that you've had, and that I've received over 25 emails already from our members to say, not only do we want to be safe, but we also want to be able to maintain the control of our environment that we own and cherish and that we have bought into as part of the way that we came into Hickory Hollow. So we'd like to retain the ownership as much as we can, and that's very important to the uniqueness of Hickory Hollow, that we get to control some of the way we get to use our shared amenities. So we're looking for that. We're looking for a balance, and we believe that these things strike a good balance. We will make movements to get these things codified in our own bylaws. We're going to go put an effort to make that happen, and we will continue to work with the inspectors to make sure things are cleaned up in terms of the way they see things.
Thank you. Commissioner Chorin.
Jack, with regards to the corrections in the barn, physical corrections, do they have to submit plans for approval? And
They've submitted some already with regard to the caretaker unit. You know, it's these old barns and other structures. When you start having assembly type uses there, it gets a little muddy. They were working it with our former chief inspector before he left, and they were started to make progress on it. We've kind of put some of that on hold until we flush this out a little bit. As soon as this is done, if it does get approved, then he'll have to work with our current inspectors until we hire a new chief to kind of figure out what's needed from a plan standpoint and things like that.
Okay. Yeah, we have struggled with that because there's been some changes just in the switch. So we thought we had things done. We'd already gone out and got a contractor on working right now. We're already paying for that out of our pocket to fix it. So we'd like the things to stay the way they were agreed to before with Mike, and we have that wrapped up. Now there's a few open issues with the fire department that we'd like to discuss, but we'd like to get the construction stuff done.
I think first we got to codify the use to acknowledge that it exists and is used in a certain manner, and then there are some matters that are probably more related to occupancy than more so than the approval for the use. So that would be for someone else to.
So does that mean that it cannot be used until these things are corrected?
I mean,
does it have occupancy?
Yeah. Well, again, this is something from the 70s. It probably never was granted any occupancy. They've been using it for 40 years without any approval. So we're not trying to come down hard on them at this point, but we're just trying to get compliance, as quickly and as best as we can. I mean, this is not, it'll never be like a fully commercial building, an assembly type use with, sprinklers and so that's why we had the fire department and our inspector go out there and just try to get as safe as possible, because the residents still use it. But I mean, there's no full kitchen in there, but we want to make sure that there's adequate bathroom facilities and, safe ingress, egress, smoke alarms, things like that. So we're trying to work through those details. We haven't come down on them and told them to not operate there. I mean, hopefully they're using some discretion with that, but we're trying to do what we can to work with them as best as possible.
And is it my understanding that parcel that had the ice rink is kind of off the table at this time? Well,
you may see it again. It's not for discussion tonight. That's a whole other issue, and it's a kind of a different argument because it's an actual lot of the subdivision, and I've obviously a hockey rink there. You can probably guess the two people that were not happy with the hockey rink being there is the two adjacent neighbors, and the argument is they bought into a subdivision with a lot next to them and not an outlot, so they expected a single family home there. So that's a big different discussion and argument that we could have, but it won't happen tonight. It's not on the table for discussion.
But at this time, they can't use it as a.
No, we've made that clear that can't be done until it gets approval.
Commissioner Bach.
How many events typically are at the pool or at the barn after 10 p.m.? So 10 to midnight or 10 to 11, and are they usually, or is it just kind of a couple families swimming, or is it big events?
It's there's maybe at the pool maybe 3 events that are big after 10 p.m. all summer, but mostly it's like 1 or 2 family that end up being there later in the evening. Maybe they were somewhere else and they came back and they sit outside by the pool. So,
Commissioner Schaefer.
I really like your subdivision. We stalked it for a while, looking for a house there, and it didn't pan out, but sounds like you have a good crew. So what I'm wondering about is the pool hours as well, and thinking more about, we actually ended up in a neighborhood that's not adjacent, but near enough to the River Club that when they have events that are late at night, and I believe they're cut off, it's not usually later than 10. And I sound kind of like an old curmudgeon even when I say this, like I'm hearing myself and thinking how old I must sound, but I mean, the sound carries well over water, right? So if there's events and there's neighbors who perhaps aren't part of those events, those hours seem later to me than what I think other pools, Lac de Coeur being an outlier, because I think that's really early, but I'm thinking, I guess it would mostly be the country clubs that might be sort of comparable as far as having a pool that has a lot of use, right? Obviously our pool was closed by the time I got here, so I'm just trying to think through that lateness of
I mean, I could
hours.
see midnight is somewhat late. 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock seems a little bit more in line with some of the other approvals. I think some of it's self-regulating, though. At that hour of night, maybe it's probably not really too.
Picture teenagers.
Yeah, and that's why we added that condition about the amplified music, so to try to alleviate that. But I mean, I think I can understand if the concern over, especially that weekend midnight, if that was reduced to 11, I wouldn't have an issue with it. We were just trying to, like I said, thread the needle between allowing them to have some allowance and then having our restrictions. So I was a little bit less concerned with the pool because it is mostly the residents that are impacted by the subdivision that vote on this thing, but I could see some of the people that are to the west could also be impacted to it as well.
It jumped out at me. I'm not hard and fast one way or the other, but I didn't know if any of the other commissioners had any reaction to that.
Commissioner Stoker.
To the applicant, I'm not sure if I'm reading into your body language. Are you in agreement with the staff's recommendations as they sit, or are there concerns?
I think I've tried to open my concerns up by saying, we still want to retain control of our private property. So I'm not sure how that comes out in one of this. It isn't, these are very specific points that we can agree with, right? But our concern, and we have brought it up, is, well, if we change it, do we have to come back to the planning commission? We feel like the autonomy is something that should be also codified in this, and maybe it's substantially changed. I don't know what exactly that would mean, but we may want to turn it back to your point, to 10 p.m. Do we need to come and ask to restrict it further? And then if we go from 10 to 12, do we need to come back again? It seems reasonable for us to be able to control our destiny if we can. And I don't know how to answer that. But we're okay as it is because this is what we're doing, right? For the most extent.
Regulate so long as it doesn't exceed the.
Yeah, I mean that's typical with the conditional use grant. We always typically allow for a little deviation in the hours so that they can expand. But if they want to contract it as much as possible, that's up to their body to decide.
So is that the main concern? Is
That's our own autonomy would be the first way to see that, right? We want to be able to.
I think it's easier to have flexibility in the contraction direction than the expansion. I think these are just limits. You could always self-regulate lower than that. I guess Ms. Rosstein brought up a good point, though. What if you have like a subdivision-wide party? Should we include the provision to have one night, as long as it's noticed, where they could have a subdivision-wide party, where they maybe have a little more flexibility with the amplified music?
Yeah, I guess that's really up to them to kind of make that request. I'm not opposed to it. Again, like I said, North Shore, I think Country Club has 4 per year where they're allowed music till 11 p.m. or something like that. So if they're, I don't think we can leave it open. And I understand the subdivision probably does a good job of regulating themselves, but as I explained on the phone earlier today to the president, this is still a residential use in a residential area, and the reason that these things exist is because of the PUD that was created that allowed for these features, and these features still need to be regulated somewhat because we can't just let it wide open, because you could have a circumstance where, again, the people that are voting maybe are not the closest people to that open space area that are impacted by it, and we also have to look out for, again, adjacent subdivisions that don't really have any control over what happens.
Yeah, we'd be happy to say on number 5 something to the effect of 10 p.m. on the weekends or with proper notification. Would that be reasonable?
I'm not sure how I'd word it exactly, but it does seem like you should have, similar to the country club, some number of events you might want to have. If we put that in writing now, you won't have to come back for approval later. But once it's written, if we don't allow for it, you'll have to come back and be in the same situation again, which obviously no one wants you have to do. We're trying to put a little toothpaste back in the tube here and best kind of summarize how we feel. I think hopefully you feel it's how it's being used now, and we feel it's how it's being used now, and just trying to get it documented.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to add a condition that they're allowed to go past 9 p.m. for up to 4 times per year, provided they provide 48 hours notice to all residents in the subdivision as well as the city, something like that, I think that would be okay, so we can keep track and document, and then if there are complaints by adjacent neighbors, we can let them know. And that happens at North Shore. There are times when there's loud music and someone that's new to the neighborhood calls and says, "What's going on? I hear all this music." And I'm like, well, okay, they have an event that they were approved for. It happens a couple times a year, and they have to be done by 11, because sometimes they'll call at 11:05 and say, "Hey, this thing's supposed to be done at 11," and then they'll have to call the police and have them go out there and tell them to shut her down. So
that's the unfortunate consequence of having things in place like that. I saw a bunch of people shaking their head no. Go ahead. We'll go free form here.
I have been the president of the association in the past. Of the 30 years I've been there, I'm unaware of any other neighborhood ever complaining about Hickory Hollow, ever. Number 2 is that within the subdivision, you asked Phil as the president, I can tell you in terms of the pool, it's not a heavily used amenity. And the neighbors are very respectful of one another as well as the neighborhood. And we're all generally of the view is that, of course, we don't want to disturb our neighbors. And so I have to say is that I'm unaware of any situation where this has been a problem. I would suggest that I like the flexibility of adding, you can have 3 late parties, where you can have music loud. Okay, fine. I wouldn't even, I'm a retiree. I don't go to these parties and things like that. But it would be okay with me. So that flexibility would be good. If that's what they do at Lac de Cour, that's great. I would suggest, though, that we, the existing proposal on there with the various conditions suggested by staff seem to me to be okay. And then you just add this additional 3 days or whatever. But I want to assure you is that this is not, this is being blown into a problem. It's not. These neighbors are here to support it because we like our neighborhood as it is. And so we suggest that it be approved as is with the amendment of the 3 additional nights.
I agree with you. I think the problem is if we don't write in an amendment to allow you to go later a handful of times per year, you really won't have the right as written, and all it takes is one person to call it in, and then we do have a problem. We want to avoid having that problem by giving you the flexibility. We're not really intending to, I mean, by all accounts, maybe there have been 2 calls in the last 20 years about some parking. That's about the extent of the issues we've
I think there was
documented. So there's not a huge problem here. We don't want, if it says no amplified music after 9, someone's going to read that. 9:05, I hear amplified music. This happened to me, and I know the rules pretty well. Someone calls it in. Oh, you're doing something you're not supposed to. Oh, yeah, well, yeah, I was 5 minutes late. Sorry. It happens, unfortunately. Yes, ma'am.
Hi there, Julie Lutz. Excuse my raspy voice. I am so passionate about this that I can barely sit still. You're probably watching me squirm. I have lived in the house directly across from the barn and the pool area. I lived there for 20 solid years. I like the neighborhood so much that I actually built a house next door. So now I've been there 27 years, and my passion and love for this neighborhood has not changed a bit. I have endured, whatever you want to call it, the noise that randomly, very randomly, comes from this shared common area. As I said to the gentleman that keeps calling, you bought the house across the street from the noise. You have choices about where you want to live. You one person can't dictate what happens for 39 families. And that's unfortunately why we're here today. And there may be a couple other people where there's, other issues, but specifically with regard to how our common area is being used, the frequency, the noise, this is getting out of whack. Because if I lived in another neighborhood, what's my noise level at 9, at 9:30, at 10? What time in Mequon wide is it a problem? And why are we getting cuffed right now? That is a whole nother conversation. You're getting called by the same person or people. It's a free country last time I checked. If you're not happy living there, move. And truly, that's exactly where we are. That is the issue. You're hearing about one person. And the rink brings in another conversation, but you're hearing from the same person. And I'm so sorry, because we'd love for him to move.
Commissioner Schaefer.
With all due respect, you're the 39 families that live there right now, and that's not stagnant. So there could be changes. So I'm just saying, we're not legislating at all. We're not making a decision based on exactly who lives there. We're talking about trying to alleviate problems in the long term. Just to be clear, we're not having a discussion.
Commissioner Jensis.
Question for Jack and a question then for the president of the association who's representing his association quite well today. Jack, the proposal that you're recommending, you've discussed this with the association representatives, and aside from the issue of the potential flexibility as to later parties, you're in agreement with the association as to this recommendation?
Yeah, I mean, some of it we had to do some digging and we couldn't find, like the caretaker unit is somewhat unusual, but you know, again, in the chronology, you'll see that we issued a permit for it way back in the 70s. So we're you know, cognizant of the fact that we've been complicitly allowing it, so we'll keep it there, but we want to make sure it is truly a caretaker unit by having the lease require some sort of caretaking responsibilities on site. The rest of the conditions, yeah, I think they're acceptable to a point where we're just trying to, again, thread that needle between allowing them some flexibility and then having some rules in place so that when we do get complaints on it, we understand what the actual framework is. I think their biggest issue is probably number 5. And again, that the amendment that was made or discussed, I think is acceptable as well.
And to the president, on behalf of the association, what's been proposed subject to that modification, that adequately resolves the concern for the association?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Well, maybe we should call the question.
Need a motion.
We don't have a motion
I
yet.
know, that's what I mean. Have
Was there
a motion?
Remind me of what was written in the materials. Was the hours for amplified music the same regardless of the night of the week?
Yes, it was 9 p.m. regardless of the day.
So
Whoever makes a motion, it might make sense to go to an hour later on the weekend. We'll see who makes a motion.
I'll try. All right, I would move to approve per staff's conditions with the, I guess, changes. Perhaps in the wording, I'm still not fully bought into these hours, but if we say not to exceed those 11 p.m. during the week and midnight on the weekends, that allows you the flexibility to then go ahead and change should you choose to do that, right, Jack? If they would not have to come back. No later than. And then for the amplified music, 9 p.m. during the week, 10 p.m. on weekends with the addition of, should we say 4, so that we are at least consistent with North Shore Country Club. For events during the year that could be notified so that if there's anyone who strenuously objects, they can at least have awareness that it's coming, that allow for later, a later event. It sounds like that's not too restrictive based on what you're doing, so I don't think that this changes the way that you are living your lives right now.
Did you want to put a time limit on that exception?
I don't know, what's North Shore have, 11?
I think it's 11 if I recall.
I will throw it 11, and if you react to that, I don't feel strongly about this.
We'd ask her to be consistent with the 12.
Fair enough. I will accept that. So midnight with announcement.
I will second that motion.
It was a lengthy motion.
Well stated, though.
I concur. Well done. We have a motion and a second. Are there any further comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Well done, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Cooper.
Mayor, I need to recuse myself from the next topic.
Noted. Good evening. We still have a quorum.
Quorum, 6.
Yeah, we've hit the bare minimum. Next, we have our last item for the evening, other than announcements, which is perfunctory. This is Torrey Drive LLC for Carol Wentz. Applicant is seeking a rezoning recommendation from R3 to R3 PUD and the concept plan approval to allow for 11-lot subdivision for the property located at 10766 Torrey Drive. We have, again, several people registered to speak and or have an opinion recorded. Let's see, wish to speak no, wish to speak yes. Yes, so we have 3 yeses. I'll go with the person who does not wish to speak first. Todd Berner of 102 East White Oak Way supports but does not wish to speak. Oh, wait a minute. That got mixed in from Hickory Hollow. Yeah, it got put in the wrong pile. I apologize. So record that one under Hickory Hollow.
You'll be noted.
And sorry for missing you before. So first we have Scott Rolfs, 7831 West Rollingfield Drive, opposes and wishes to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to the council. Just see if I can get this adjusted here. There we go. Appreciate your consideration to speak tonight. So I do not live in the affected area, but I'm a 23-year Mequon resident, and I have a very close and dear relatives who purchased a home in the neighboring subdivision right off of Fairview Court just last year. And I'm speaking both on their behalf opposing this and also as a general Mequon resident opposing this. When my wife and I, when we moved to Mequon, we bought a lot, built a house back in 1999. Our developer told us, look, you're lucky getting into this. It was an 1.5 acre lot. And our developer said, Mequon has gone to 5-acre lots. Mequon development is really slowing. It's going to be a fantastic low-density community. And I don't think in 1999 he was wrong. In the last 23 years, we've seen considerable additional growth. We've seen lessening of the 5-acre lots, all sorts of different things. And I think that the committee, I would ask your consideration to say this. Constant growth is the dream of the developer. And many of these developers do not live here, do not have a stake in our community. Constant growth is also, and I'd ask you to think about this as you leave tonight, constant growth is also the mentality of the cancer cell. And I say that in that there have been a lot of comparisons in the years I have lived here between Mequon and Brookfield. And Brookfield, not everyone, a lot of people believe Brookfield, too much traffic, too much multifamily development, too much commercial, and it is a congested mess. Are we Brookfield yet in Mequon? No, we are not. But we're on our way there. And it's not a question of us becoming Brookfield by one decision by the Planning Commission or the council, or 2 decisions. It's death by 1,000 cuts. And so as you look at this agenda item tonight, and you look at future agenda items, I ask that you consider and say, is this death by 1,000 cuts for Mequon to become congested and overcrowded? In the case you have at hand, you have some very long developed subdivisions with long developed road patterns and cul-de-sacs in them. And what the applicant is asking for, and the Planning Commission staff is recommending, is that not only do you try to jam 11 homes into this 11-acre lot that's in a very already developed area, but they're saying, why don't you connect the roads up so that what is now a very quiet, I'm going to call it dead-end road that runs through down to Fairview with many cul-de-sacs, you're saying connect that through and bring in a lot of increased traffic, potential issues related to safety, potential issues related to crime. And I think that the people who live along that section, along the country club there, that's a 50-year-old subdivision. And my relative bought into that with the idea of saying, hey, this is where I want to raise my family. I have a very young child. I like to be able to let that child be able to bike. We like to be able to walk as a family. We like to be able to take our dog, everyone out. And this whole development, to me, if you're talking about 100 acres out in the northwest part of Mequon, it's a different story. But this is taking a very, very dense, long-standing set of communities and subdivisions and saying, we're going to kind of blow it right up and drop 11 homes in and completely reconfigure the traffic. I don't think that's fair to the people who live there, the people who've invested there, and ask your consideration to both deny the proposal for the development, and if that's not a decision that you want to do tonight, to at least deny the connection of the roads. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rolfs. Next we have Rob Featherston, 10702 North Fairway Circle, opposes and wishes to speak.
Thank you, Mayor and Commission members. I sent some of you a letter, so I'll just kind of read off of that. I object to the proposal for 2 reasons. First, the development proposed will greatly reduce and displace the wildlife in the area that coexists on that 11-acre wooded parcel and the surrounding areas. Eliminating the natural area will significantly decrease the habitat for the deer, turkey, fox, coyote, and other wildlife that frequent the area, particularly in my adjacent cul-de-sac on Fairway Circle. Adding these 10 additional homes will also considerably produce more noise to the very tranquil pocket of the neighborhood, especially once those mature trees are all cut down. And I'm just kind of surprised that nobody would want that beautiful 11 acres for a home back in there. But my second and greater objection is the recommendation of creating an access road to the proposed development from Torrey Drive and Gazebo Hill to Fairway Circle in North Shore Estates. Having moved there in just 2021, one of the primary decisions to select the location was that cul-de-sac. With a 4-year-old at the time, my wife and I were excited that walking, biking, playing in this area would be quiet, given the fact there are only 3 other homes on that circle, and a beautiful wooded area across the street giving privacy to the adjacent subdivision. The roadway doesn't serve access for just those 11 lots, but the entire adjacent subdivisions, which have been kept exclusive since their creation. The access road not only affects those on North Fairway Circle, but a majority of those in the North Shore Estates area, bringing more traffic. The access will allow for a faster outlet to North River Road by cutting through the Gazebo Hill area, giving their subdivision an increase in traffic as well. One of the major draws to North Shore Estates is the minimal vehicle traffic due to the limited access points. With additional young families moving into the neighborhood, we're concerned of the pedestrian safety due to the increased traffic. I don't agree that creating an access road really saves 15 to 20 minutes of plowing time versus a cul-de-sac as mentioned in the report. Having served on police and fire departments in the North Shore, I do not believe that an access road would provide any faster response times for emergency vehicles either. With or without this access road, it still requires long entry down either North Shore Estates or Gazebo Hills roads respectively. And finally, this added roadway also allows a second outlet from our neighborhood for criminals. A call for help right now reduces the initial focus or response to a primary entry-exit point. My wife and I spent our savings on one of the most desired homes in the area, not just for the house, but for the surrounding environment that makes it a home. Please don't change our dream come true. I ask you to reconsider development, but more strongly the access road. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Jeff Tunney. He both supports and opposes and wishes to speak.
You asked that we don't keep repeating what others have said, so I'm going to try to keep this rather brief. I'm not necessarily opposed to the development of the 11 lots. I think it would fit in well enough with Gazebo Hills and not really change too much of the feel of the area. However, I am vehemently opposed. By the way, I live in North Shore Estates West. I am the president of the Homeowners Association. I have received the same feedback from all of the, or many of the board members. I don't want to really necessarily get into whether or not the 11 lots, but I want to focus my attention on the connecting of Fairway Circle. And just like everybody else has said, we do have a lot of much younger kids happily moving into the subdivision. Everybody is, using those motorized scooters and boards and all that stuff, and the kids just shoot out onto that main road. They love to ride around in the circles. We do have on the other side of the subdivision on Country Club Drive a lot of traffic coming out of North Shore, the country club itself. We've been struggling with a lot of speeding through there as well. So I look to that other side of the subdivision as a way for kids that want to be riding their bikes and stuff, having an area where we're not having through traffic. And like others have said, I don't see any real big advantage to having a through there. It's not gonna, a police or fire could get to those lots just as quickly through the road as it is now than connecting it through Fairway Circle. So that's it. I would just ask that you guys strike number 14 in the recommendations. And again, I don't. If you want to say yes to the subdivision, that's fine, but please don't allow the connection of the road. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Ryan and Kate Bieski, 3427 West Clubview Court. They oppose but do not wish to speak. They specifically oppose the thoroughfare, which I guess is the connection. Next, after that, we have Rachel Morafuk, 3424 West Clubview Court, opposes, did not indicate whether they wish to speak or not. That isn't a no. Support the development but oppose the thoroughfare. And lastly, Andrew Morafuk, same address, oppose but do not wish to speak apparently, and same comment, support the development but oppose the thoroughfare. Is there anyone else from the public who would wish to speak that didn't fill out a card? Yes, sir. Just come up to the podium and give your name and address, and we'll get you entered into the minutes.
Yeah, my name is Laverne Nall. I live at 10714 North Fairway Circle. I have lived in that house for over 10 years. I'm a lifelong civil engineer. I've been employed as a civil engineer for 50 years. I own an engineering business on Mequon Road. I'd like to speak to the staff recommendation number 14 regarding the access road. I believe that currently I've been a bit appalled by the erosion on Fairway Lane. It seems that the hydraulics and the surface runoff are about all that roadway can take. I believe that adding another access road would increase drastically the impervious area, increase runoff, and I think a lot of that runoff would probably end up on Fairway Lane, which will undoubtedly cause more severe erosion. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I see two other people with their hands raised. Three. We'll get to you all.
My name is Rick Paler. My wife and I have been residents for 35 years on Meadowview Court on the west side of the golf course. And we brought up our family there. We became empty nesters, and now we've seen an influx of a lot of young families with little kids, which is wonderful. And you know, they're riding their bikes, and you know, we've really tried to be careful as residents of the subdivision to watch our speed, you know, to adhere to that 25-mile-an-hour speed, and opening this up to have other people coming through the subdivision will just, they're not going to have that same feeling in their heart that they want to watch their speed. And plus a lot of more traffic is just not good for where we live. And another nice thing that we have is that there's no outlet, and that deters problems. I just leave it at that, but I thank you for having a chance to speak to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am, we'll take you first, and then the person to your left after that. I think you both raised your hands.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and the commissioners. My name is Prashanti Shiva, and my husband and I moved there in 1998, and we have lived there very happily and in the serene and quiet neighborhood. We cannot ask for anything more from that neighborhood. As the first speaker said, I would have said word for word what he said. And we love our neighborhood, and the 11 homes would open if it's for too much traffic. And we live right across on the Torrey Drive and the Gazebo thing from that driveway where you are proposing where they are proposing the 11 homes. So I respectfully submit that you please deny that. And we would like to keep it as it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would you also wish to speak, sir?
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Purush. My wife and I have lived in Gazebo Hills since 1996. That's when we built our home. When Mr. Ross and the second gentleman were speaking, I was thinking, what am I going to say? They said everything that I was going to say, and obviously I don't want to repeat what they said. But one thing that I do want to repeat is that when we bought the lot, we were told that we were one of the last ones to be able to buy a 1-acre lot. That Mequon was moving away from 5-acre lots to 1-acre lots. It was never going to go down. We have been very happy in the subdivision. It's very quiet. We can go for nice walks in the evening. There's no traffic. I think the proposed development will totally change the characteristics of the neighborhood. It's something that we have lived in for 26 years. We plan to live there for the rest of our lives, and we really didn't expect this to happen. So I would request and respectfully submit that this new development not be permitted. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other comments from anyone from the public? I see, oh, there's two more now, okay. Go ahead, sir, and then the guy right behind you can go next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Justin Strom.
I live at 10708 North Fairway Circle. Laverne is on my right, Rob is on my left. I have a little different perspective on this. I think this is a great development. And I think that this is a unique piece of property in Mequon. Perhaps one of the last two developable properties of this size. I frankly just think it would be foolish to put a road through the end of this development and turn this into be from a lovely, exclusive, probably expensive development into just another street in Mequon. I read the report. If I recall, this is a private road in this development. If it's a private road, then the whole argument of snow plowing and saving money would be irrelevant arguments. If it's not a private road, these are all either mostly 3-rod roads in our area. A plow cannot cover the road in one pass. So if it were to come up Fairway Lane, circle, end the circle, it still has to go back. Now, according to the engineering, I suppose they wanted to deadhead, then back up to the end of the circle in order to take care of this development via the new access point. It doesn't make sense. It's a beautiful development. I hope it occurs. The developer has a great track record. And I just think item 14 is an inappropriate item for this consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. And then the gentleman right behind you there.
Jonathan Wentz, I am on the Gazebo Hill Parkway side of things. The Fairway Circle crew has kind of come out in large numbers to talk about the road through, but we'd had similar concerns from a lot of the people that I'd spoken to in the Gazebo Hill neighborhood as well. Just really, the neighborhood has a lot of the cul-de-sacs as it is, not a lot of the connections to other places, and the concern of the continued traffic through from the Gazebo Hill side was also kind of a main topic of conversation for us too. So, echoing the same points.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Otherwise, we'll bring it back to staff and the applicant. Going once, twice. Okay, back to staff now. Would the applicant care to step forward? I'm sure we'll have questions at some point, but we'll get through the staff report real quick and then.
Well, I think most of the issues revolve around that connection, which we'll get to in a little bit. But in terms of just the context of the area, the parcel is zoned 1 acre currently. I know there's this idea that most of Mequon is now 5 acre. That's out in our rural areas, the non-sewered areas. This is a parcel that's zoned 1 acre right now, and they could develop it without a zoning change under that 1 acre criteria. They would just have to do a couple things differently. They'd either have to have a private road, basically what matches the yield plan that's in your packet. They could do a public road as shown here with bigger lots, but they'd probably end up losing one. Or they could, do what they're trying to do here, which is a conservation subdivision. So I just wanted to give you some context about what is going on in terms of the surrounding area. And I'll show you this is the ortho photo, kind of hard to see maybe a little bit on there, but just kind of just shows the concept of where we are in relation. So this is all the Gazebo Hills development. This is the Fairway Circle, North Shore Estates. Then this is Haven Court up here. So it is the last one of the few. The gentleman was right. There's a few parcels left, but this is one of the last undeveloped pieces. In fact, this piece was actually here first before all of this. If you look back at the ortho photos from the 60s and 70s, this estate was here before Gazebo Hills, before we were Fairway Circle, and is the last now becomes the last remaining piece to be developed. So, in terms of the road connection, which Kristen is also here, she can discuss. Again, we've always advocated for as many road connections as possible. As you can see on the plan, Fairway Circle's right away does abut this property. Doing some research on it, I did identify in Gazebo Hills. When Gazebo Hills was approved, there was a recommendation that they connect to Fairway Circle, or that road that goes to Fairway Circle, but As you can see on the ortho photo, there's basically an outlot that kind of segregates the two. So the only way they could get that connection through is from permission from North Shore Estates, which they were not given at the time. So at the time when Gazebo Hills developed, there was actually a attempt to make a connection there, but it was not done because of that outlot. So this is the only area that was left remaining where the two parcels abut one another with right of way, basically. So I'll go back to the plan now for a little bit. So this is the proposal. As you can see, it's 11 lots. These lots are roughly, 0.7 acres in size. This is similar to what you see around it. You have different varying sizes. North Shore Estates has smaller sizes because obviously they're the golf course. Haven Court, smaller size lots because they have a large open space to the north. And then you have Gazebo Hills, which are relatively close, the same as the parcels that are being presented here. In terms of the design, one of the things that staff was concerned about is that you can see there's a pocket of specimen trees up in this area here. We're asking for those to be put in an outlot instead of being on the private property. There'll still be one basically isolated parcel or a tree there, which we'll still have to provide protection against, but we did not feel that the outlot would be able to get that low without impacting the buildability of that lot. So we're requesting that. We're also requesting a little larger open space along the two sides. They have basically at 20 feet on the north and the east, and then 30 feet on the west and south. We're recommending 30 feet all around. I know the applicant has asked if we would be open to 25 feet, and I would be okay with 25 feet just on the north and on the east because it's abutting other open space that's currently there, so that buffer still would be in place. We're also asking for a natural trail around the perimeter. We didn't feel that it would be necessary to do any type of hardscape bike path or anything like that, but a natural trail around the perimeter would be one of the things we try to push for in a conservation type design. With regard to road connection, again, Kristen can here to talk about snow plowing and all those issues regarding the road. I guess the commissioner's got a couple options. If they do not support a connection to the road, staff would recommend that there at least be a hardscape bike path that would connect that cul-de-sac with the public road cul-de-sac. I will mention that one of the gentlemen thought that this was a private road. As proposed, this is currently a public road. So we feel that if the commissioner or the council ultimately does not want a connection there for a roadway, we'd like to see a bikeway connection that would connect the two together, because that would make a lot more convenience for people that want to visit others in the neighborhood without having to go around on major arterials like Donches Bay Road. So other than that, we do recommend approval of the proposal according to the conditions report, and I'm here to answer any questions you have.
Are there any questions from the commissioners to either staff or the applicant? Commissioner Chorin.
Jack, the proposed size of the lots meets the zoning.
Well, again, this is zone 1 acre, so it's 1 acre lots. So what they're asking for is the conservation subdivision, which allows smaller lots in exchange for open space. We don't have a requirement on size, but these are actually a lot larger than what we've seen with Highlander Estates and with the Enclave. Those were in the 0.3 range. These are still 0.7, and we would even be open to them being smaller, but I think because of the value of this land and the size of those houses, I think the developer is a little reluctant to make these lots any smaller.
Two other questions. If you have the road connection, which I don't agree with, the lot sizes change, or a couple of the lot sizes would need to change, correct?
Yeah, I kind of don't critique my art, but I did kind of try to put together how that would look, and just to see it. And so you could do it similar to this. So these would be a little bit more narrow. You could still do the 11. But yeah, it would result in a couple tighter lots on this side. So
okay, and with the bike connection, again, that would affect no road connection, but a bike connection would affect a couple of lots.
Yeah, it would. It's really not. I mean, between 7 and 8, basically, we'd like to see a 10-foot pathway there with an 8-foot pavement. So you could split it down a line and make it 5 and 5 and make that an outlot. That wouldn't be a major impact.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? So I'll just say I generally like connecting roads, but I'm not so keen on this one. I think it kind of, regardless of connecting two neighborhoods, it just kind of throws a a monkey wrench in the middle of this plan. Functionally, you might end up sacrificing a lot in the end to do it. Otherwise, you're going to have several tight lots stacked on the north side, as we're shown in the not too crudely done concept plan from staff. Probably better than I would have done. I do support the pedestrian and bike path connection, though. That's something that works well over on my side of town in Beechwood Farms and the subdivisions over there. We're interconnected to all the subdivisions and the more traditional neighborhoods to the north. So it's actually quite a benefit. It does keep bike and pedestrian traffic off the main arterials, which obviously makes it safer. So that's, other than that, the staff's absolutely right. This is R3 today. You could build 11 houses on here right now without the PUD, and you'd probably not get quite as nice of a subdivision, I don't think. It's certainly well within their right. This isn't 5 acre zoning today. It's already zoned 1 acre, just to be clear. And it does have sewer and water available, right? So it's already supportive of that from an infrastructure standpoint. Are there any other comments or questions from the commissioners? Is there anyone from the applicant side have anything to say about any of the conditions or want to talk about anything?
No, gosh, I had this 45-minute spiel all set up to try to keep everybody entertained here tonight, but I think I'll skip through that. In summary, we really did try to design this after Gazebo Hills, which I believe was the original tent with the Torrey Drive Road going in. And I think by virtue of meeting with neighbors and the design we've got and the fact that we don't have a lot of upset neighbors here from Gazebo Hills, I think it really speaks for itself in terms of what we've done in terms of the design. We did meet with the neighbors. We met with Kathleen Schneider, the alderwoman. With respect to the staff's concerns, Jack missed one concern we have, and that's that we suggested and really would like a 30-foot front yard setback instead of the 50-foot that is identified in the staff conditions. I'll let him address that in just a second. Regarding point number 14, we also do not want the road connection. We didn't feel that was appropriate. And I would think after what you heard tonight, including there's a letter that former Mayor Kurt Gilo wrote on behalf of himself, not as part of the North Shore State Subdivision, but he very much opposed the road connection as well. So I'm not going to beat a dead horse with respect to the road connection. And then we looked at the outlot on the outside of the property, and we'd like that to be consistent with the 25 feet that certain parts of Gazebo Hills has as a landscape easement, but also include the specimen trees as suggested by Jack. With those comments, I'd like to just remind the audience that somebody was wondering if we were out-of-town developers or something, but my partner Fred Bursch and the John Stoker with Victory Homes, who's going to build the homes on the site and buy a lot of the property, and even get involved with Fred and me in the development. We're all local, experienced, successful, and hopefully respected developers, and we do care what happens within the community. But that said, Fred, do you have anything else to add?
No, in our meeting the other night at the library with the homeowners association, the bike path was brought up, and we aren't sure where we'd like to put that, but we're supportive of finding a way to make a bike path connection between Torrey Drive and Fairway Circle in some location. So, and when we talked to Jack about the setback, our real concern was lots 1 and 11. So Jack, if you could just address that, that would be great.
Yeah, the 50-foot, I'm going to blame that one on my eyesight. I didn't quite read their plan properly, and I thought the 5 was the 3 was a 5. I don't have an issue with the 30-foot setback. It actually helps keep the houses a little closer and further away from the existing homes. So I'm okay with the 30-foot front yard setback.
Okay, so we have I'm just curious, what are the other subdivisions? Is it also 30 nearby?
They
Not that that
vary.
matters too much, but
They vary. I mean, I'd have to look at we have a whole subdivision list, and they vary from 30 to 50 somewhere in there. Some, I don't think anything's shorter than 30, but I would think I could probably even tell you off the map on.
certainly if we could make, I mean, some conservation subdivisions have smaller lots, which you'd naturally need smaller setbacks, because at some point you can't put the house in the lot anymore if your setbacks are all 50 feet.
Yeah, I'm looking. I'm just going to try to measure one of these. See if I can come up with something close on.
I think if staff's okay with that, I don't know if there's any comments or concerns from the commission. I would anticipate not, but I don't want to speak for anyone either.
Yes, I think it looks like there's at least the first one I picked was about 40 feet in fairway circle on the cul-de-sac, and it could be closer. So, but like I said, all the subdivisions vary, and they're typically 30 to 40 to 50 feet, somewhere in that range.
I think, Jack, as you mentioned, we want to keep the houses close to the roadway, and if you look at the exhibit that we submitted, you'll see that some of the homes on Turnberry are fairly close to the rear lot line, and we'd avoid that, so that would be helpful. So,
You ready for a motion?
I am, unless there's any more comments or a question. Commissioner
You
Shake.
can do it before or after, but
Go ahead.
I just, I feel like a lot of times when you guys bring up a proposal, it generates a lot of discussion, and mostly what's generated the discussion is the road, and that wasn't even part of your proposal. But I'm not an engineer, and obviously, this came from our engineering department for a reason. I don't want to just discount it if there's going to be, other unintended consequences that we're signing up for. I guess I don't like it, but I'm not an engineer, so I feel like I don't know if we want. I don't know. I don't want to put you on the spot, Kristen, but I don't know if there's things we
Let's
should be
have
thinking
Kristen come
about.
up and at least explain I get the rationale.
Good evening. Jack has always summarized the engineering issues well. It was clear from the right-of-way on North Fairway Circle that there was at least an intent to provide access, because otherwise the outlot would have continued along that property line. We always advocate for connection, not the least of which is for snow plowing, which, by the way, was written directly by the plow drivers that plow this. So anyone that's questioning the 15 to 20 minutes for a cul-de-sac, it's fact. And we went through how this would otherwise be plowed if they connected, and it would be less time. That said, we understand that the commission has the right to remove the requirement should they so choose.
Thank you. Any further questions? I think that was fair. Yep.
Good.
Thank you.
So I'll make a motion for approval pending all staff recommendations. Add was it the 30-foot setback?
It's 30 feet for the front setback for condition 4.
For 4. And condition 14, that would be a path or bike path instead of the road, correct? Or add a bike path in.
A bike path of a minimum 10 foot of width in an outlot with an 8-foot pavement.
You got it.
Exactly like that.
Subject to staff approval of the
Subject to
final
staff
design,
approval.
because they may not want it exactly where we're envisioning it.
And the subject at the location.
Yeah, we'll address that at the preliminary plat stage for the most part, but just at least want to get on record. I guess the only other question would be then, before I didn't want to interrupt you, but the issue of number 3 with the perimeter open space. I think that's maybe where there's a little bit of disagreement. We want to maintain 30 on the west and south, and we're okay with 25 on the north and east. And I think they wanted it to be uniform across, so I think that's the only discrepancy.
Does that impact the trees?
Well, the trees are separate. We're requiring those trees to be in the outlot no matter what. But the rest of it, they're looking to throttle that down to 25. Or this one they're okay with 25. I think we're in agreement here and here, and then with the trees. Where we're not in agreement is we still want to maintain 30 here and 30 here. And the reason for that, from our perspective, again, these lots that are along Gazebo Hill could actually go right up to the property line, so that gives a little bit more buffer.
I'm okay with that. Are you okay with that?
Yes.
Yes, I'm okay with that.
No, so that's as is.
As is.
with
Yeah,
the
okay, as is.
Okay.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Did we capture everything?
I believe so.
Sorry, it's a very awkward point to interject more public comment. If we agree we've got everything, we've got a motion and a second, let's call the roll on this one.
Commissioner Bach?
Aye.
Commissioner Becky Schaefer?
Aye.
Commissioner Gentis?
Aye.
Commissioner Hawley?
Aye.
Commissioner Chorin?
Aye.
Mayor Nurbin?
Aye.
Vote passes.
Congratulations.
And thank you very much. We aren't tarred and feathered tonight.
You got off easy. This wasn't that bad. Next up, we have announcements. Next meeting is Monday, September 19th. Taking August off. Hope everyone enjoys the month off. That brings us to item number 6. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. We're adjourned.